First of all, congratulations and thank you very much, because you really made it. You mentioned the acronym SYNENERGENE correctly. This is quite rare. Let me see if I can open this. Okay, first of all, so we are not one of the, what's the name, the Go4 projects, so not a conceptual one, I would say, but and we have, I think one specificity of the project is that we have, on the one hand, we have to deal with something which is all new and emerging to some extent, like synthetic biology and the very interesting new developments like biohacking and all these kind of things discussed in this context. On the other hand, we have to deal with hardened lines of conflict, in particular in the area of green biotech, and so this is a real challenge in this project. So what we used in the proposal phase concerning responsible research and innovation was this, so a better alignment of science and science policies, what societal needs take into account ethical aspects, inclusive and deliberative processes, and two broad categories, stakeholder involvement and public engagement. And then this idea that stakeholders should become co-responsible for innovation processes by means of early engagement and mutual learning. We understood and we still understand that the conceptualization of RRI is still ongoing, and that RRI can be deemed a process innovation. And then, for example, with these five often named aspects like societal engagement, gender, open access, science education, and ethics, but I would say also in other aspects too. So this is how we started. And remember again, this is a dialogue project, and dialogue and stakeholder networking project. So we are not a research project. We are not even allowed to do research which is not directly useful for one of our, I think, more than 120 events that we are organizing or in preparation of them. So the idea is that the goals are an open dialogue between stakeholders concerning Symbio's potential benefits and risks, and to explore possibilities for its collaborative shaping on the basis of public participation. And as a mobilization and mutual learning action plan, we include a wide variety of mobilization and mutual learning processes, and have stakeholders from science, industry, civil society, policy, education, art, and other areas. I will say a short word on art too. So later this day, I think, some of the films are shown, short films are shown of the Biofiction Festival, which is this year was part of the SYNENERGENE project. Then a goal is involving citizens and specific publics through well-established or innovative means of engagement, and supporting the convergence of stakeholders and perspectives, and then a kind of iterative mutual learning process, and which should be open to change. So we have not just started, but in the first phase of the project, this was also about internal mutual learning, and that was really a kind of clash of cultures, even in the consortium to some extent, and in areas where I did not expect that the differences are so large. For example, even the difference, say, between us, TA people who are doing some kind of public participation work, and the science centers and science museums, which are a strong partner too. There were really very different concepts and ideas of how to involve the public, the role of expert, the notion of scientific evidence, and so. And now we are in the phase where we have really started with various events, and the mechanism that we have built into the project is that they are very thoroughly documented. And so for future events, we really try to learn from the events before, and if necessary, even change them to some extent, or put them into kind of new clusters of events. Like, for example, at the moment we are probably built a cluster of announced events around the notion of responsible bioeconomies. Okay, we hope to make significant impacts, such as raising public awareness of SynBio, so I'm not too much concerned about this. This will be the case, I'm quite sure. Fostering public discourse and yielding benefits for involved stakeholders in European policy-making in international context. The two latter things will not be so easy, I would guess. And we are to develop 3 agendas, which we should start to implement in the final year. Participation agenda, policy, and the research agenda. So whoever was interested in these fields related to synthetic biology, but also to other fields or adjacent fields, you're more than welcome to participate in this process of drafting the agendas. And the idea is, of course, that not only the consortium, this is the consortium, which is already quite large and can speak to some extent for a large part of the, say, SynBio community in the broad sense, or the SynBio ELSA community, or the SynBio TA community. But of course, we want in these agendas, the best thing would be if some of the ideas that are developed in this project by the stakeholders and by us and by citizens should be implemented by external actors, firms, universities, civil society organizations. I have underlined, for the purpose of this conference, which is, so to say, technology assessment, clear technology assessment units, and italicized those which are at least doing some kind of technology assessment work. But if you look there, you will see what we have: the European Network of Science Centers and Science Museums in it, and 8 science centers or science museums from different countries and even continents are working with us. We have firms like GeneArt, or there's now part of Thermo Fisher Scientific, and we have civil society organization, also the most vocal one in this context, ETC Group. But we also have a Finnish BioArt Society, Theater Freiburg, Biofaction, where we do a wide range of activities where I would say it's not about using art. We have some elements where we use art as a means of raising attention and a kind of public participation activity, but the strongest element of art and science that we have in this project is clearly about art, seeing art as a kind of different approach to reality. So it's not like to be reduced to an input in a kind of rational discourse in the usual sense, but it's a kind of aesthetic rationality behind it. And have a look at some of the short films. I think you will like them. Okay, and then we have a particularly close cooperation with the iGEM Foundation, iGEM community, where we have access to hundreds of, or even thousands of young people working in this field of synthetic biology. Our activities are structured by 4 platforms, and I will go to this graph in a moment. Here I just want to point out that we also have open fora, or forums, however you call it, business, civil society, media, policy, and science. And that's our instrument where we try to involve people from outside the consortium who want to do initiatives on science and society or RRI aspects and need some support, or want to have an exchange about these questions with their own, so to say, peers, their own other stakeholders of their area, or with other stakeholder groups. And for example, what we can do is to support these forums is, and all other kinds of cooperation, by the way, we are open, the scheme is flexible enough, so we are open if some of you would organize something on synthetic biology or a related topic. We can come with a SYNENERGENE funding and support this in terms of from consortium, or even become co-organizers. And what you will see in this project is a very strong bottom-up element. So we have not planned it top-down. We did not develop a MMLAP like this, and then we looked for roles or something. But we took together the ideas of the people and then built a structure around it. And this structure is shown here. So we have one platform on futures, which is more, organized by our colleagues from Rathenau Institute. We have a large activity area on public science and participation, which is led by this network of science centers and science museums. We have the one on art, culture, and society, which is led by our Biofaction colleagues in Vienna, and the one on research and policy, led by us ourselves. And then as a kind of elements of the entire thing is, on the one hand, online communication. It's not just a website, but there are a wide variety of activities organized online, including a discussion forum and other things. And on the other hand, we have an international dimension where we partner with the Woodrow Wilson Institute, Eleanor Powells and Dave Rejewski, because in this case, even in the call, it was mentioned, not explicitly US, but it was quite clear that it would be a good idea to have the US in it. And some other continents are also represented. So, Okay, as I said before, but I think it's clear from what I said before, it's not a task of SYNENERGENE to directly contribute to the conceptualization of RRI. Such contributions are, however, welcome, and SYNENERGENE could serve as a tool to collect input by a wide variety of stakeholders and citizens concerning the conceptualization of RRI. This means, for example, in the what's the name? The GO4 projects. So if can, of course, in my point of view, use the MMLAPs to some extent to also bring in more views of stakeholders concerning what RRI is about and what they think about should be done in this area. We aim to be innovative in terms of our public engagement activities and stakeholder interaction, so we often do not use the typical expert workshop talks, but other formats, which has already yielded in a Darmstadt workshop and one in Washington quite interesting results. And as I said before, it includes artistic and cultural perspectives. And to some extent, our experience so far was that some of these hardened lines of conflict that I talked about before can to some extent be discussed in a new way due to these formats. But there is a kind of limit of discourse, so to say. I will come back to this in my last slide in a minute. Okay, and then I think concerning our impact, we really hope that these agendas will become a major input to RRI in synthetic biology and related fields. So I would wish that it does not need to be SYNENERGENE, the name SYNENERGENE on it, but I think if some of these agendas some of elements of these agendas would be, for example, in future calls on synthetic biology or related fields be used as options for science and society action, I would find this very helpful, because at the moment we are in a situation, I think it started, René will know all this much better, but I think it started that some time ago there was a lot of talk about ethical aspects. Now we have RRI mentioned in large calls for natural science and technology projects. And the result is that they often come to us, some of us who are working in this area, and say, do something. We have no idea what. Do something, we have no interest. And so I think it would be really helpful to have a concrete list of actions for option where to some extent also people who are not in this closer communicative circle we are in could really understand, okay, these are options what we could do, very concrete actions. Okay. How many minutes do I still have? It's almost 2, okay. Okay, then I added a few things like RRI in general and MMLPs in specific have an Habermasian flavor, I would say. Communicative action based on normative reason is deemed crucial for democratic social interaction. Deliberative and participatory democracy become the new ideals, and without the necessity, by the way, to reach a consensus in MLAP or beyond. On the other hand, we deal in SYNENERGENE, like everywhere, with the well-known features of discourse, as they've been pointed out by Michel Foucault. And we can use a strategy in which a plurality of voices and vested interests are expressed and documented. But of course, our recommendations and suggestions for action have a greater chance to make relevant impacts when there is consensus on them. So our idea for these agendas is that there's a consensual part, and then non-consensual points, other items for action that, for example, an industry representative can easily use without agreeing to some. So we want to get away from this very general level of everyone agrees on something. Not want to get away. We want to have this, but on the other hand, also non-consensual options for action to some extent. And so but we try to use innovative formats, as I said before, and expose all stakeholders to other logics and perspectives. And I wrote here after a time in the comfort zone. So we did not, in the beginning, invited all of them together, kind of say a left-wing radical New Zealand artist and industry representative and an old-style philosopher or something. But they start in their own zones, and it's a part of this project that they can use, even SYNENERGENE funding, the civil society people, the business people, use SYNENERGENE funding for strategic planning from their perspective. But of course, in this year, in the next year, and in the last year of the project, we will not, so to say, allow them to stay in the comfort zone. So then we bring this together in a work plan which is already quite developed but can be changed if necessary. And we hope to thereby at least help create a willingness to cooperate. So I had a last slide, but this is maybe too much at the moment, but maybe I point out one of these things. I think this Habermasian approach can be quite useful, might even be kind of civilizing force, because to my impression it's that if we deal on these issues on the assumption that all kinds of scientific evidence, and this includes social scientific evidence, which is often ignored by some of the natural scientists who believe that they can, for example, convince citizens of the truth of their scientific evidence or something like this, and not realizing that someone can oppose, for example, development in synthetic biology just because he or she believes that nature is sacred in some way. That's often they do not understand that this isn't a fully acceptable position and politically quite strong, and so often they do not understand, for example, how public acceptance works. So they have no idea of this discussion around deficit model or something like this. So I think it's important to bring in all kinds of scientific evidence, but also all kinds of reflection based on all kinds of reasons. So this is what I meant before with artistic rationality. So I think it's wrong, a wrong interpretation even of Habermas to think this is all about just finding good reasons for something, but it's kind of a broader notion, I would say. Okay, maybe I stop here now and just leave this as it is, because the last point would be too much at the same time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christopher. I have a comment, probably more an answer to a question you raised, namely, where's that list of how do we do responsible innovation? And to answer that, I would like to point at the very back row. There's Aki at the back there, who is the coordinator of the Responsibility Project, and they are building an observatory which is supposed to, I think, house possible answers to the question. And the other reference would be the RRI Tools project, which is also trying to do just that, to develop a set of tools that people can use for responsible innovation. So hopefully, in a year or so from now, this will all be available.
Yeah, I'm just browsing the website and I was wondering, what are these platforms? Is this only online? And how do you connect the different stakeholder groups? And then I'm just curious, what are your innovative public engagement activities?
The platforms are, no, they're not just online. The platforms are on the one hand an internal organization structure, so it does not mean it's not a work package in the classical sense. So there are four platforms and thematic platforms, I would say, and different partners from different institutions work together on a wide variety of activities, which are to some extent assigned to one of these platforms. But they are, these are not. It's not just online. It's just described there. So, for example, in Platform 4, we have more, say, stakeholder networking activities, research and policy, and of course, in the public science and participation, there are many dozens of public participation and public science activities. So innovative formats, okay, that's always, if you're in the field, we are probably, I don't know how innovative you are, and I'm really not an expert for this, but so what the Excite partners are doing at the moment, these eight science centers and science museums, to my extent, is quite unusual. In particular, I think what we are strongest in, but I'm really, maybe you should really contact Excite people about this, but I think what we are really is unusual in our project is this combination of art and science. The one that I said before, like art as a kind of independent or autonomous reflection, but also we use various kinds of lay people, theater plays, and all these kind of things. I know it's not the reinvention, no, it's not entirely new, but I think what I found very interesting from the activities that I took part in is what we do in the stakeholder workshops, because there are even so elements of role playing have been used, and so these kinds of things I find quite interesting because it helps to overcome these hardened lines of conflict, as I mentioned before. So.
It's more a practical question, and goes to the previous speaker as well. You said that you are not allowed to do research.
I qualified this,
well,
so you can do your research.
Excuse me if it's me who poses this question. regarding all the aims you have, and also the aims of the previous speaker, how on earth are you going to do that without doing research? Or are you considering social scientific work not to be research?
No, I would say probably again René would know this much better. I think there is in this entire in these all these schemes there is some thing where it says we do not support research and development, and I think they just took it and used it for this very different project. So, and even in the proposal phase, as you very well know, we were able to put some research tasks in it, but they are to some extent really connected to this main goal of fostering societal discourse, interaction. As long as we do this, it's fine if we are doing it. On the other hand, it was quite clear that it would be nice to have all kinds of scientific publications in the end, or academic publications, but not on the budget. And I think it makes sense to some extent, because what we do not want to have in these projects, in my point of view, is that everything is just used to go to nice academic conferences, write nice papers, and do the events en passant. That's not what we want. So I think the measure of success of this project is not necessarily a kind of scientific output in the sense of a better concept of RRI or something, which can be some event, but I think the measure of success here is making an impact in concerning the stakeholder interactions, concerning public participation, and hopefully in the sense that others take up some of the things that have been developed in this project. I hope you agree.